In the last few weeks, 3 different settlements have come out for any consumer that's been harassed by robocalls. And these 3 settlements total just a few dollars shy of $100 million. That is $100 million that is going to be available for consumers to claim if they qualify or have been called by any of the 3 companies that Scott Hardy from Top Class Action, who's with me now, is about to tell us all about. Scott, we've talked a lot about settlements. One of the biggest things here, consumers love it. It's money in their pocket. This sum here that we're talking about from 3 different class actions is probably, I think, so far the biggest one you and I have had to discuss. We're talking about a pool, when you combine all 3, even though they're all separate, of $100 million here. That is very real money. And this is just all 3 of these cases we're talking about. These are from robocalls. You know, people just getting unwanted phone calls, which are technically illegal, by the way. $100 million available for them. Let's start at the top. Cox Communications, $10.8 million. Tell us this one.
Sure. So the Cox Communications class action alleged that Cox used a robo-dialer to call up people, leave messages, harass them to get them to try to buy Cox services. But thankfully, this one will result in almost $11 million that will be going out in this settlement fund and give those viewers who received a call from Cox a little justice. And this TCPA class action could wind up being $100 to $300 per claimant. So you don't want to miss out, because if you do, that $100 to $300 that's estimated just goes away.
Yeah, that is a lot of money for some, illegally but annoying phone calls. That's very real money. And look, I'm the kind of person, I don't know what has happened with my phone number, but I get these robocalls and things like this on a near daily basis at this point. I don't think I've gotten any from Cox Communications, which, looking at this settlement, is actually quite unfortunate, actually, because I would love to just get to $100 to $300. But people also have to understand the TCPA, which is the Telephone Consumer Protection Act of 1991. This basically says, you can't use the auto dialers, the robocallers, to harass people into buying your services. I'm kind of, putting it in a nutshell there. But that is essentially what all 3 of these issues are about. That's certainly what Cox is about. And the next one we have a water filter company. They've been doing the same thing. They've agreed to a $27.6 million settlement. Lay this one out for us.
Sure. This one is pretty crazy. And that, usually I've heard a lot of these defendants. And when I saw that $27.6 million settlement against these folks who are selling water filters, I said, my gosh, that is crazy. And so part of this is an injunction telling them that they are no longer allowed to use an auto dialer to try to market their products. They are no longer allowed to have their distributors use an auto dialer to try to sell their products. But if you did, you could get a small portion of it. And so we'll have to see. This one is saying around $12, but that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Usually the TCPA violations are a whole lot more. And so I would greatly encourage you, as this thing opens up, to submit your claim. Otherwise, we've had these settlements before that have said it's going to be $15, and all of a sudden it turns into $50 or $100 because people just didn't bother submitting a claim and they need to pay it out.
And what's really interesting too about this issue is that they weren't just calling people saying, hey, buy our water filters. That was part of it. But they were also trying to actively recruit people to also become distributors in what I'm guessing is some kind of very intricate water filter pyramid scheme here. Because you don't just make cold calls saying, hey, would you like to go call people and sell water filters? Well, just buy a few from us and start doing it. So that's also part of this. And I have to imagine that the people who got that little sales pitch of, hey, come be a water filter salesperson, as this thing goes a little bit forward in the process, that they may end up getting a little bit more of that settlement than just the person who got the call saying, buy a water filter or not. So we'll see. Hopefully that number increases. We'd love to see it get up to those Cox lawsuit or settlement numbers. But right now, nothing tops $61 million that is going to become available for people called by Dish Network. You and I were speaking briefly before we started this segment about this one. Tell us what's happened recently and why this one is finally basically reaching the settlement here.
So in the Dish Network case, this one, Dish Network actually lost years ago. They lost the case. You had a $61 million judgment against them, and they appealed it. And of course, these appeals take a long time. I had people say, Scott, please, why haven't I got my check yet? Well, why haven't I been able to submit a claim yet? Well, this is why. You have appeals to verdicts. You have objections that pop up. And in this case, it delayed things by about 4 years ago. This one actually started in 2009 is when these allegations took place. And it's 10 years later, 10 years after the purported crime, so to speak, right, took place. And now we finally have validation of the verdict. And we should see that $61 million because Dish Network appealed it. And the appeals court went, no, you're actually, if we go ahead and side with you, this throws out the TCPA Act. We don't want to do that. So pay up, get that $61 million check, and start writing it to those folks that you harassed and hassled according to the class action back in 2009.
So with all of these, again, we're dealing with the robocalls, the auto dialers, the spam phone calls. Is there going to be any kind of system set up? I mean, do people have to know for a fact that they got called? Or is there going to be any kind of database where they'll be able to put in their phone number and see if they qualify for this? Because I know a lot of times with some of these, they do have that, where you can put in your phone number and it will say, yes, you received these calls. Are we going to see anything like that? Or is that something that could happen in the future for people to easily verify whether or not they qualify?
It could happen. It will just vary by settlement. Especially when you got a settlement from 2009, we're not going to remember if I got a call 10 years ago from Dish Network.
Right.
But it's entirely possible. And so I'll want to submit my claim. Hopefully, because this has been ongoing, hopefully they still have the court records and they did during the discovery process, they had the actual list of numbers called. Because in many TCPA class action settlements now, it's exactly as you said. You just go onto the settlement administrator's website, you put in your phone number, and it tells you whether you're in or not. And if you're not, all right, well, you just lost 10 seconds of your life, no big deal. But if you are in, then you get to spend an extra 30 seconds submitting your claim and hopefully getting a check for a couple $100.
I frequently actually have to do that for my mom. I'll put in her phone number when I see one of these things. And sure enough, there's been like 5 or 6 that she qualifies for. So I always pass those along. Like, all right, Mom, you got another one. Go ahead, fill it out. Let's make this happen. So again, anybody, if you want any information about all of these settlements and not to mention all of the other settlements on topclassactions.com, follow the links in the description of this video. And of course, while you're there, sign up for their weekly newsletter. Get all of these stories and many more delivered directly to your inbox every single week. Scott Hardy, on behalf of all of us here at Ring of Fire, thank you and everyone over there at Top Class Actions for everything that you do. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks so much for your time, Farron. I appreciate it.